Good morning, everybody. This is Van Hargis of Van Hargis Horsemanship, and we're going to talk a little bit more today. I mentioned about where I'm going today. I'm not on a previous video. I mentioned where we're going today, and I'm not going to the ranch until much later the afternoon because we've got these meetings that we're going to go to today. Very important things to support this local community, and I appreciate the opportunity to be able to go do that. But yesterday I posted a video about nothing beyond the basics and focusing on the basics and how important those basics are. And as a result, we had a few people email. We had one lady ask a question on that post, on the comments on that post. Well, what do I consider the basics? Well, it's pretty darn simple. What I consider the basics are this. And I'm going to sum it up in just a few words. Forward motion, control of forward motion, and the stopping of forward motion. Well, some might argue, well, that's pretty darn vague. And it could be, because there's a whole heck of a lot more to it than that. But when I'm thinking of forward motion, the very first thing I think of is I want to do things to make it real easy for my horses to succeed. In order for that to happen, I got to know something about horses in general. I know that horses are fight or flight animals. I know that horses don't go into trouble and go looking for trouble, which means that one of their first instincts is to move away from pressure and to seek, listen very carefully, seek the path of least resistance. That's really cool for me to know as a horseman and as a horse trainer. Seek the path of least resistance. So let's say I take a young colt that's never been worked with, or I take an older horse that I know nothing about. And what I mean by that is, what happens if a client brings me a horse and they're telling me, oh, Flicka here's a good little pony, but he's got a little habit or whatever. But other than that, boy, he's really good. Immediately, it's not that I don't believe that person, it's just that people have an odd way of protecting themselves. Whereas horses will tell the truth. So, when that person leaves, I'm going to take that horse in the round pen and I'm going to start it all over as if it's never had a human hand on it. And I'm going to start by focusing on the fundamental basics, which is number one, seek the path of least resistance. So if I'm in the round pen and I'm going to ask the horse to say go to my left, I'm going to totally cut off the right side of that round pen so that this horse can't help but to be correct. By moving away from me and moving into an open area, the horse is learning to seek the path of least resistance. That is my absolute number one criteria. Before I touch them, before I handle their feet, before I rub them on the face, I want to let that horse go and move them around the round pen to where they get really good at seeking the path of least resistance. Always go to the open door, so to speak. So, to answer the lady's question, what do I consider the basics? That's one of them, is to seek the path of least resistance. That's number one, first and foremost. Everything I do after that will build upon that one thing. I want the horse to think, not react, but respond, and respond by thinking to find that path of least resistance. Once the horse begins to find that path of least resistance, everything I do from that moment on, the horse knows that an answer exists. And the answer is, find the path of least resistance. That is so incredibly important to me that it is my number one criteria in establishing forward motion. Forward motion is so important. Without it, we have absolutely nothing. We might as well be at Walmart dropping quarters on a little pony up there that just stands in place and just rocks back and forth and makes the kids happy. But anyway, we're going to follow up on this more. We're going to cover this in more detail. But for today, just think about that what I consider the basics is number one, forward motion. And in achieving forward motion, the very first thing we look for is to train that horse to respond, to think of finding that path of least resistance. Thanks again for you guys joining me on the ranch road. Until next time, this is Van Hargis with Van Hargis Horsemanship.